This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
Welcome to the March 2022 meeting of the Board of Police Commissioners for the Town of North Haven. My name is Larry Lazaroff, Chairman. Our Vice Chairman, Robin Wilson's not here tonight. Our Secretary, Mark Calafiore. Commissioner Alden Mead. Commissioner Robert Hannon. With that, I'd like to ask for the approval of the minutes of the February 22nd, 22 meeting, both regular and executive session.
I'll make a motion to approve the
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Passed. Mr. Secretary, do we have any correspondences this evening?
No, we do not, Mr. Chair.
We'll go to the Chairman's report. So I'd like to make a few announcements that on March 7th, we had a special meeting of the Board of Police Commissioners where we did some interviewing, and the Chief will be reporting on that as well. I believe the Chief will also have an update on the contract negotiations. As a reminder, as I do each month, I ask that you just be aware of your surroundings as far as when you're walking, jogging, exercising off the street. Wear some bright clothing. It's difficult to see you in the early morning or in the later evening, so please we'll try to be a bit more aware of what's going on. Tying in with that is asking and reminding everybody to please lock their cars, their homes, their sheds. Basic stuff that we try to just keep on reinforcing so that we can try to eliminate the problems that all the communities are having. And lastly, I'd like to ask you that to support the budget referendum when it does come up, to vote, and hopefully you vote in favor of the budget to support the 3 new police officers that we are proposing for next year's budget. As we know, this community, like all surrounding communities, has had an increase in crime. Besides being proactive ourselves as citizens, it's important that we increase the number of police officers we have to protect us in this community. So I hope you vote in favor of the budget when it comes up. With that would be my report. Chief, it's up to you, please.
Thank you. I'll start with the budget. As usual, our budget is currently at 68.8% expended as of today. This keeps us under our self-imposed limits that we try to stay under. We're about 4% under budget with our targeted goal at this point. So going into the fourth quarter of the fiscal year, in about 2 weeks, we're in very good shape. On February 16th, we presented the budget to the Board of Finance for next fiscal year. As you know, we're asking for an additional 3 officers as well as funding for a supernumerary to be an SRO, a school resource officer at the high school, so we could pull back our full-time officer to the police department to add to the staffing here in patrol. This request has moved forward after the last Board of Finance meeting. It's been supported. So the next step is a town meeting where the budget will be presented with the opportunity for public comment and questions. So if any commissioners would be willing to speak that night, I think that would show a lot of support for us. And with your knowledge of how we do things and why we do things, I think that would hold a lot of weight. So I would appreciate that if you're willing to. We were awarded a $25,000 grant for this this calendar year for 2022. It's targeted for crime suppression, which will include targeted patrols as well as overtime for our officers assigned to the New Haven Shooting Task Force. We are also going to spend some of that funding on community outreach, specifically the Citizens Police Academy, if we could pull that off this year, which we intend to do. And to touch on the overtime for our task force officer, it's a very important endeavor that we began just 2.5 months ago. At a recent press conference in New Haven Police Department, the New Haven Police Chief gave a lot of praise to Officer Michael Altieri, who's assigned to the shooting task force. Did a great job with an investigation, a shots fired investigation. He saw from start to finish, and that culminated in an arrest warrant, and they took a shooter off the street. So Chief Dominguez gave Officer Altieri a lot of praise, which is not only good for the North Haven Police Department to get our name out there, but as you know, the same suspects that are committing crimes in North Haven are committing crimes in New Haven and throughout the region. The people who are committing shootings and shots fired incidents, and carjackings in New Haven are doing the same, committing carjackings and robberies here in North Haven.
So he's an officer that was temporarily assigned,
He's temporarily assigned to the shooting task.
and he's there right now.
He is. Yeah.
How long's he been there?
Since January.
Okay.
Second week in January. Under our traffic report, we have no new requests from citizens for this month, but just to note, Valley Service Road is going to be opened sometime this summer from the Route 22 connector all the way to the Amazon property. The idea is this will relieve about 20% of the traffic that goes in and out of the Amazon property from Washington Avenue. We'll now use that back entrance and exit on Valley Service Road. There's some work the town has to do to facilitate that, tree trimming, some flooding issues at one point of the road, maybe some guardrails. It's going to be lined, and hopefully we'll have some lights on that road, but that should open up this summer, which is a good thing for all the complaints that we've received as far as the traffic on Washington Avenue. We get a lot of complaints about 6 o'clock at night specifically. Amazon runs 3 shifts, so there's always cars going in and out, but 6 o'clock at night, Washington Avenue, there's been some issues as far as that light going into Amazon with the long queues and people taking left turns from the right lane and so on, so we hope that resolves some of those problems. We've recently received a quote. Sergeant DePascal reached out to a company to receive a quote for the traffic light on Universal Drive in front of Barnes & Noble and BJ's. This is something that you may have noticed on Washington Avenue. Instead of having the trips in the pavement that sense the cars being there, which allows left turns and right turn signals and so on, the new concept is to have basically cameras that sense the cars from above the lights. Less maintenance long term. It's fairly expensive to install, but the state has transitioned to these types of trips for the intersections, and we intend to do the same. So we'll pursue some funding to get that done on Universal Drive.
So those cameras that are on the avenue now, like in front of the plaza, that's what these cameras are for? They actually are for traffic control?
Yeah,
They're not security?
Cameras. They're not security video cameras that are recording anything. They're just sensing the vehicles. So when there's X amount of vehicles, say in a left turn lane, they'll activate the lights.
So I thought they were all security cameras, okay.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
Yeah. That's actually good. Preventative, maybe.
Yeah, can't hurt. We anticipate taking our new Fords fairly soon. That bid was accepted to do the upfitting of those vehicles. Our Chevy Tahoe has been ordered, is en route, and this past week we accepted a bid to upfit the Chevy Tahoe, a new style vehicle we're going to try out this year, and hopefully it works out for us. A larger vehicle. We're going to be able to put some extra equipment in that vehicle, so we hope that works out well for us. Under new personnel, our newest police officer, Colin Ahern, scheduled to attend the Milford Police Academy starting April 21st. The expected graduation, I believe I mentioned last month, will be October 2022, this year in October out in Milford, and I'll notify all of you, of course, when that's scheduled. After approximately 12 weeks of field training, we anticipate they'll be on the zone in February 2023. Last month, the board, as you know, gave 4 conditional offers of employment. All 4 of those individuals are in the process of the background investigation and the pre-employment testing, and I'll expand further on that in executive session. We have promotional tests that are scheduled for beginning of April. Our sergeants and lieutenant tests, they both do a written test and an oral board test. The written test is scheduled for April 4th, and the oral board for April 7th. And the captain test that all 3 of our lieutenants indicated they want to participate in is an interview only, and that interview will be April 7th. So the results should be ready mid-April, and I'll be able to present that to the Board of Police Commissioners for the regular April meeting.
Who's gonna conduct that interview? Is it you guys, or is it
No.
outside agency?
Outside agency.
Yeah.
We go through South Central Criminal Justice to facilitate it. They use an outside agency for the written test, and they use a number of different
Panelists from,
local agencies
Gotcha.
from the area to take care of the interviews. They present scores to us. You'll have the rankings and the scores available to look through to make your decision. And as you know, Captain Stervides is overseeing both major divisions here at the Police Department, the Uniform Services Division and the Investigative Services Division. So it'll be nice to move forward and make those promotions and be able to spread out some of that work. So we all look forward to that happening. Recently we created a recruitment team. It's made up of 1 lieutenant and 2 patrolmen. We identified the need, as you all know, reading the articles, hearing from myself and the deputy chief, the struggles to find applicants. You know, it's not only across the state, but across the nation with fewer applicants looking to enter law enforcement. So we decided it'd be in our best interest to do a better job recruiting qualified candidates. We purchased some items to set up recruitment tables. Recently, those 3, lieutenant, 2 patrolmen, attended a physical assessment day. To be able to apply for a job, you have to have a chip card. So everyone who's interested in law enforcement is going to this physical assessment. So we set up a table, handed out information about our department, provided them with our social media platforms so they follow us and get our information to try to attract more people to apply here. We're going to target colleges to recruit job fairs for 5K races, for example, and they're going to provide us with some information to post more on our social media.
Yeah, I see this, excuse me, I just see that in the local communities also, they post a lot on Facebook about their hiring practices, they're looking to recruit a lot of different people. That's what you're gonna be doing as well, expanding upon that?
We started that already, increasing those posts, but we're gonna continue that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Gotcha.
What's also new is we're reviving our internship program. We've always had a college internship program. We're going to get that back up and running now that COVID has slowed down. I guess you would describe it as slowing down. But what's new is we are pursuing a dispatcher internship program. A student from Quinnipiac University is interested in coming here as an intern to learn more about what dispatchers do. I think it's a great way to get these students involved in law enforcement, but also dispatch. It's kind of one of those positions that not many people know about. A potential new hire down the road after graduation or before graduation. So we're excited about that. We also began an internship program with the North Haven High School. It's a program they started just in general, having their seniors do internship programs. So we accepted a North Haven High School senior student. He has been coming here and working with the department, and he is going to do the rounds: dispatch, investigative services, uniform services, information services. Really get to know what we do and why we do things. So we're looking forward to that program, being able to target a younger demographic, maybe to generate more interest in the profession in general. Touch on some recent events and crime. This past week we had an overdose of a 17-year-old, a high school student who overdosed at the individual's home. The officers provided officers provided Narcan to that individual. It was not a fatal overdose, but it just kind of shows you that, you know, these addictions and these overdoses don't just target a certain demographic or age. It's really all over the place. We deal with it more and more often, and our Narcan program has been successful, as well as our program with Quinnipiac Valley Health, as far as notifying them when people have these issues, so that they can reach out to them and attempt to provide them some kind of addiction services, which is something fairly new. In February, we had 6 stolen vehicles. This was up from 3 stolen vehicles in January. 4 of them were recovered. 4 of the 6 from February were recovered. 2 processed by our detectives. An additional 6 vehicles were stolen so far this month. So a total of 15 stolen vehicles this year to date, which is up compared to the past every year, compared to the last 5 years.
Do we have data if they were locked or unlocked, or we don't have that kind of data?
Keys left in.
I don't have that with me right now. It's certainly in the reports. Most of them are unlocked with key fobs or keys in the vehicle still.
Are most of them from people's homes, or any of them from places of business, or?
So out of those 6 from last month, I can't speak specifically
Yeah.
without looking them up, but typically the vast majority are from homes on
Yeah.
lot and driveway.
That's what I was getting.
This past month, we had 3 burglaries to residential homes. Detectives went out and processed all 3 of those scenes, and they're all ongoing investigations. No arrests made at this point, but evidence was recovered and will be evaluated at the forensic laboratory.
Were those unlocked doors, or you don't know?
No, forced entry, it's all
Forced.
free. As you look through your packets, you'll notice Captain Storvini's reports. As I noted last month, the uniform services reports have been expanded to include a number of different categories. More information for the Board of Police Commissioners, where different things, different crimes and trends are happening in terms of the different districts that we have, days of the week, time of the day, and we certainly appreciate him taking the time to provide you with more information to take a look at, snapshots of what's going on in town.
I also wanted to compliment him as well. It's very important information, and it's well done, so thank you.
We'll pass that along.
Please.
If you reference page 3 of the Uniform Services report, calls for service continue to increase. It's on the broken record. I've been saying this for the past year, at every meeting, at the Board of Finance meeting. But this is a very important statistic to track. Every call for service that an officer or 5 officers are on is time that they're not patrolling neighborhoods or business districts or conducting motor vehicle enforcement. So it's important for us to keep track of not only how many calls are on, but how long they're on those calls for. On the same page, if you reference the graph on the right-hand side of the page, you'll see that not only calls for service are up, but they're writing more written reports and more accident reports. There's a direct correlation, obviously, with the calls for service and the administrative side of what these officers are doing. Again, it takes them off the road, outside of patrol functions when they're doing those calls for service and administrative functions.
So if I may also ask a question, I noticed on the news that some local communities have asked the officers to do the reports, which is probably difficult to do, I imagine, in their car while they're therefore visible in a parking lot.
So,
Is that feasible or is it really awkward to try to do a report while you're trying to pay attention to what's going on?
we
And
implemented that years ago. I would estimate about 75% of the reports are done in the cars.
they are okay.
If you have to do a 10, 15-page report, it's better to come inside, get comfortable, have a full keyboard.
Mhm.
But most of the routine calls for service, the reports are, accident reports and written reports are generated in the cars. Sometimes it's appropriate to be on the side of the road or in the front of a parking lot to do those quick reports. But again, we balance the officer safety aspect of it. If somebody's head is down, typing reports, going through forms, you don't really see what's around you. So a lot of times, you all probably notice maybe a patrolman parked in a back of a parking lot or off the beaten path somewhere. They're typically doing reports or completing forms, making phone calls, follow-up emails, but because they're tied up doing those administrative functions and distracted, it's safer for them to do that in those areas, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Are calls for service broken down in any further way to say what type of service ever?
They are, unfortunately for reporting, well, what's good is
Yeah.
we receive good data, but because there's so many different categories, there's hundreds of different categories.
That's what I thought, yeah, I was just wondering if they changes over time, or if you ever even can categorize the expense of a call. You shouldn't do this, cause it's a crazy thing, but if one might get a handle on how much is the expense of a call for service,
Right.
you know, on the average, but they might be so different.
That's a good point. We typically track and search the deputy and I, every day. We search the main categories that we try to track,
Yeah.
different trends. But there's so many broken down that it's
Yeah.
impossible to run reports and analyze every single one.
Yeah, thank you.
And in that same report, you'll see that motor vehicle stops are higher this year to date compared to last year, but they're still not back up to pre-pandemic motor vehicle stops. A big part of that, I believe, is because of the increased calls for service and administrative functions, the reports the officers are doing, but also coming out of that pandemic phase and getting back to normal. I'd like to touch on CLIA a little bit. From January through February is a very busy time for CLIA accreditation for the manager. Lieutenant Thorpe has done a great job not only finishing out the last accreditation cycle that the deputy chief started prior to his promotion. But this time of year, there's a lot of reports and analysis that needs to be done. So just to touch briefly on some of them that were conducted through starting in the end of January through the middle of February. The first is the Bias Policing Administrative Review. This looks at the racial and ethnic as well as the age and gender makeup of North Haven residents, as well as the same categories for the makeup of New Haven County. And CLIA has us analyze those numbers compared to the drivers of cars that we stop. Not just motor vehicle stops, but verbal warnings, post infractions and summonses, just to ensure that our policing practices are not showing any biases. So it's a good thing for every agency to do, but it's a lot of work. So I just wanted to highlight that. Lieutenant Thorpe did an annual evaluation of our early intervention system. This is a system that tracks things like supervisor reviews of the police officer's activity. They review the body-worn cameras, footage, and document that in the system. It reviews and documents use of force occurrences, praise from citizens, civilian complaints, noteworthy performances that supervisors note. So it's a way for us to capture this data and allows us to identify if there's any trends that are occurring throughout the year that we otherwise would not have noted that we could address before it becomes a problem. It also allows us to evaluate what officers are performing above average compared to their peers. The lieutenant completed a use of force analysis. This is use of force by dates, days of the week, times, race, gender, including injuries. After this analysis, the lieutenant prepares a comprehensive report for me, which summarizes all the statistics, but also includes any recommendations for further training or policy revisions. So it's an important report. And finally, he conducted an annual administrative review of our detention area. This is a review of the functionality of our cell block, our processing area, and it documents any training needs or any policy revisions that may be necessary for that area. It's a high risk, high liability area, so it's important to do every year. Moving on to the Benary Scholarship, I have no requests this month, and prior to executive session, scheduled for Saturday, April 30th, we are going to do, as we do every year, the prescription drug take-back, and in the next couple weeks, we will announce the location and the times for that. That's all I have, except for executive session.
Okay. Excellent. So I just have another question. In tonight's news, there was I think it was Plainville, that they had a cybersecurity issue where they were shut down in the police department as far as computers and et cetera, et cetera. So I imagine that we have preventative measures. Are we taking any additional steps, both town-wide and police department-wise, to prevent or to anticipate a potential hazard like, I think it was Plainville that had it today. I'm not sure if you.
I didn't see the news alert, but.
I mean, there was everything, all the computers were shut down, it's all handwritten, everything today, the whole bit.
Yeah, Yale University Police just had a similar incident. It's occurred, I wouldn't say routinely, but a few times in the last few years where municipalities have been targeted. We're fortunate, we have an IT manager and one other IT employee who not only do a great job in the IT world, but they come from a police and first responder background. They used to work, both of them worked for a company that provides us and the majority of police departments in Connecticut, Massachusetts with first responder software. So they've been great. They make great efforts to protect the town. We communicate between them and our partners at the Fusion Center through CTIC as far as any alerts that are broadcast, as far as any attacks like that. But like they tell us all the time, you do your best, but no place is completely protected.
Right.
But
So are we doing anything
aware of it.
additional,
Yeah.
or we're doing it, or just we're monitoring it as a status quo like we normally do?
They constantly try to improve.
Okay.
Not, I call it firewalls. They talk
Gotcha.
way over my head when it comes to IT, but they constantly try to improve the security. And they're well aware of the trends and what's going on.
Great. Great. Any questions, comments? I'm good. Deputy, anything? Nothing?
Commissioner Mead had mentioned about the stolen vehicles, and the chief had also discussed that crimes within North Haven are, people that are committing crimes in North Haven or New Haven, they're not specific to one community. So going in mind of what I'm kind of referencing everybody, your little public service announcements, people when they're getting out of their cars, pumping gas and running in to get whatever, snacks, lotto tickets, a bottle of water, not to leave their cars running. There's people looking for any opportunity to take something that's, not theirs to take it from you. Same thing with shopping centers, we've seen stuff recently in the paper, in neighboring communities. Be aware of when you park your car, notice, what's around you, be prepared to get in and out of your car, quickly, be aware of your surroundings, just to kind of make yourself less of a target, so.
Thanks, that's what I was alluding to, I was thinking about, and not to scare people, but it's always good to be aware of your surroundings when you're in a public area and parking lot. We do hear these stories, and we're so lucky, and we have such a great police department, and we have such a vigilant community, but it doesn't hurt to be as safe as possible.
Excellent. Great. Anything else? Good? Okay. Do I have a motion to leave regular session to go into executive session for discussion of personnel matters?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, we are back now in open session after having had an executive session for personnel. Any further questions? Any comments? Okay. Can I have a motion for adjournment? Make a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.